Welcome to All Home Care Matters, the show where we discuss all things home care, with discussions on important age-related matters and topics. Brought to you by Enriched Life Home Care Services, the #1 rated home care provider in Michigan by Top Rated Local.
Hello, and welcome back to All Home Care Matters. If this is your first time visiting us here at the show, we want to say thank you for taking time out to be with us today. We appreciate how valuable everyone's time is, and that's why we try and make each episode here at All Home Care Matters something that will hopefully matter to you. Today, we are honored to welcome Kimberly Anderson. She is the Director of Business Development at UI Medical, the makers of the QuickChange Wrap. Welcome, Kimberly. How are you?
Well, thank you. I'm fine. Thank you, Lance. And we're so happy to be here and be a part of this and give our intake of how we can help bedside caregivers dealing with a very sensitive issue.
Absolutely. And, it is a very sensitive issue. As I shared with you in a conversation prior to this episode, we have a home care company, and we deal and families deal with incontinence, and these issues on a regular basis is probably in the top 3 issues that families face. So, QuickChange Wrap and the work you guys are doing at UI Medical is really helping to alleviate that and give them a resource they can depend on. So I want to kind of start there. If you could kind of give our audience a brief overview exactly what the QuickChange Wrap is and how it works.
Sure. So the QuickChange Wrap is actually the first of its kind wrap for men and their body part, their anatomy. And it actually wraps. It's not a diaper. It's not a pad. It's not a brief. It's actually a wrap. And what's unique about it is that not only does it prevent infection and reduce skin breakdown, but it also gives you an alternative to have that open airing, which is so popular now with like infection prevention nurses and wound care nurses, where they want that open airing. They want that moisture to be released so there is no breakdown. And our product is mostly for non-ambulatory, bedbound and wheelchair bound. So it actually is best also and benefits the bedside caregiver because there is no rolling or turning or lifting or repositioning. It's all done up front to keep the urine contained, to maintain it from mixing with feces or pulling under the buttocks and breaking that skin down too. Now, not to say that some men who are not so incontinent or maybe are high risk fall, that they can't keep it on their bedside table at night and put it on themselves and dispose of it so they don't get up and break their hip on the way to the bathroom in the middle of the night. That too can be used for them, but primarily it is for non-ambulatory gentlemen, wheelchair bound, bed bound.
Right. And you mentioned a lot of the risk associated with that moisture and things and, bodily fluids and, excrement. Is it fair to also say it can help reduce urinary tract infections?
Absolutely. In fact, it has been proven that the QuickChange Wrap will reduce CAUTIs, which is catheter-associated urinary tract infections, UTIs. Those are for the indwelling catheters where the tube is put up through the urethra and the urine is drained into a bag. So it has been able to reduce that. And if anybody doesn't know, like when we were going through COVID, the ERs were so overwhelmed, the emergency departments were so overwhelmed that their triage, they would just catheterize them and send them on. And so the CAUTI rates across the nation increased by like 30%. So there's been a real focus in trying to get rid of catheters to having that alternative. And just a side note from that too, is that even though catheters sometimes are used to measure I's and O's, the QuickChange Wrap can be used for those to weigh for I's and O's that can be, or that don't have to be catheterized, but as an alternative too. But just like they do in the pediatric units at the hospitals, you weigh it dry, you weigh it soiled, you subtract the difference, you can chart it in ounces, grams, milliliters, and So reducing those kinds of infections, but also for like condom caths and what some people call Texas caths.
Yeah.
They don't normally stay on for those gentlemen who maybe have a more retracted or less of a shaft to work with to wrap around. So therefore, there is a lot of leakage. And this is a great alternative to maintain that skin and not get the macerations on the shafts and prevent it from possibly going sepsis, from possibly going gangrene. I mean, I can't think of a better alternative.
And you're mentioning a lot of the great benefits of the quick change wrap that most of your other incontinent products do not offer or could not even provide. Who came up with this idea, and how was it really taken from an idea into a reality?
Well, I'm glad you asked because it is a beautiful story. It's like a made in America kind of story, in which, just as a side note, also, we are made in the USA. We're very proud of that. And but this beautiful woman who's just tiny and petite, little itty bitty thing, decided she was going to take care of her husband in hospice when it came to that time.
Mm.
And after several weeks of having to lift and turn and reposition, changing briefs, changing linens, it became very physically taxing for her. So she decided that she was going to create something that would help him and help her. And she just started cutting out patterns in fabrics and stuffing them with absorbencies. And when her husband finally passed away, she thought, oh, great, I've got a great idea. And was privy to some great friends that were able to make some investments. And here we are. And it took a few years. And so I always tell these nurses and CNAs and such, when I go to these hospitals or I go to these skilled nursing facilities or home assisted facilities, that if you've got a great idea, don't give up on it, because sometimes it really does come to fruition and you're not just helping the patient and the end user, but you're helping yourself be able to get to the next day, to have that energy, to be able to spend quality time with them instead of always changing and lifting and everything. So it's a beautiful story. It's a great legacy to her husband, and to her son, who's very active in promoting and visiting these senior centers and such, and kind of getting the word out.
That's incredible, and that is, the American dream and the American story, right? Yeah,
It
that's
is, right?
incredible. You mentioned the end user, Kimberly, and help explain, because I can imagine, anybody that's, a caregiver for a family member or in a facility, any number of healthcare professionals. I can imagine them saying, well, what makes this different? So why would the end user or the patient use the quick change wrap over their, normal adult brief, urinal, or catheter that they've, got a closet supply full of? What makes it
Right.
different?
Well, if they have to, sometimes they have to be catheterized because of blockage or something like that, but it can be used with leakage. The quick change can be used with leakage. And as we talked about the infections that can happen with catheters, instead of using urinals, sometimes let's just be honest, there are bad aims. And most of the time, then you're spending time cleaning up the floor and such. And trust me, I've been a caregiver for two gentlemen in my life, my stepfather and my brother.
Mm.
And I've been a caregiver for a neighbor who actually, my stepfather was a physician, a family physician, and she had been a patient of ours for like 35 years.
Wow.
And so I know that the mental exhaustion and the physical exhaustion that goes into this. So you don't need to be spending time mopping up floors and things like that. But also there's some gentlemen who prefer to hold a urinal between their thighs. Well, sometimes that skin starts to break down between the thighs as well. And there's leakage, and even the lips of the urinals, the rims of the urinals are very sharp,
Right.
and they can cut. And it is, I mean, when you're talking about that area, it's a very sensitive, very thin tissue, piece of the anatomy. And you don't want that kind of exposure to sharp edges and to, again, the moisture. Now, with briefs, The difference is if they're not bowel incontinent also, this is a great opportunity to get rid of briefs, because again, non-ambulatory, you're not thrashing around as much, but you don't have to move the legs. You don't have to separate the legs. You don't have to pull the whole brief off to change him every time he urinates. It's just going to be right up front. And you'll be able to see through our videos and our links through this podcast that, as I said, everything is contained up front. So there's not a lot of moving him around and adjusting him. There are times where you do have to reposition just for that so they don't get bed sores and pressure injuries and such. But this is a great opportunity to give that exhausted bedside caregiver some relief also without having to go through the whole scenario of undressing. And that's what's great about this too, is because for those that use wheelchairs, we have a lot of veterans. In fact, we are in all of the veterans hospitals, in the majority of them, in their affairs hospitals, veterans affairs hospitals, and they too have found that by applying the wrap in the supine position while they're in bed and putting a mesh brief over the top or a tabbed brief, that they can sit into in the supine position while they're in bed first and then get into the wheelchair. If they go to their OT or their PT and they have that stress incontinence, they're not going to have to be wheeled all the way back to their room to be changed. They can be pulled off to the side, pull the front of the brief down or open the tabbed brief, change the wrap because all the equipment's up front, and get back to business and get back to what you're doing. Okay, so there are those benefits as well. Less undressing, less physicality, less exhaustion on both parties, let's just say.
Absolutely. And you're right, the, urinals are very jagged, I'll say, and especially like you said, that area is already sensitive. And then when you add in somebody that's health has been compromised or they're elderly, their skin is already, susceptible to tears and, things like that. So it's just all around is safer and healthier for them to utilize that. So when you're talking about, because I know you said it's really, right now, primarily it's a male product, how would you really profile the perfect end user of the QuickChange Wrap? What does that look like?
That would be somebody that is non-ambulatory, bedbound or wheelchair bound. Anybody that, for acute care hospitals, it's ICU units, neurological units, stroke victims especially. We work with Parkinson's and MS. We work with children with spinal bifida, where they're getting the benefits of not having to change every 30 minutes or whatever. It can be stretched a little bit longer. Not saying that you don't change it, you don't put it in place and walk away, but because it holds, and I don't know if I mentioned this before, but it holds 500 mLs, which is 17 ounces
Yeah.
of urine, and the top sheet is designed to dry in less than 2 minutes. So they may feel the bulkiness, they may feel the weight, but their skin is going to maintain dry. Okay. So that end user would be anybody that maybe is, as I say, in a wheelchair or something that wants to go out to a restaurant. Oh my gosh, where they wouldn't leave before because they were embarrassed and they would have to strip down or not be able to go for long periods of time. Now you can pack a few in your backpack, strap them to the back of your backpack, go to a restaurant, enjoy the night with your family, go to the restroom, whether you're in a stall or not, just pull down the front, change it, throw it in the trash, and you're good to go again. So that gives them a little bit more freedom, a little bit more dignity.
Right.
And let me tell you, we have worked with some nurses at schools where it's like changed these children, these young boys who have had to raise their hand and say, can I go to the restroom? And then have to be taken to the nurse's station and assisted.
Right.
Now he can wear his, what do you call them? Cougaroos or kangaroos or whatever they are, the roos, and take his quick change into the restroom and change it himself if he has the dexterity in his hands to do so. So I think by giving the end user that availability to have a little bit more independence is a blessing to them.
So you do have pediatric sizes and, model.
Nope. Nope, one size fits all. It's
One size. Okay.
amazing the way the unique design
That's incredible.
addresses those with a shaft, with little to no shaft, bariatrics, where it's buried under the
Mhm.
pannus, the stomach covers the genitals. Um, even for it makes a great scrotal sling for those gentlemen make any kind of abdominal surgery, hernial repair, anything like that.
Sure.
There's going to be a tendency to have scrotal edema where the scrotum just engorges into
Right.
a size that's painful and kind of unbelievable. But with our wraps, we demonstrate on our videos how to surround the scrotum, creating a bowl shaped sling to contain the urine in one place so it's not going everywhere, but also to separate those skins where it's very painful and raw and rubbing, but also then folding another one up once you've wrapped all that up to put it underneath and give him some relief, some elevation, and give him some relief and keep it from the weight of it from going down between the thighs and even becoming more painful.
Right.
So, as I said, there's like millions of other, there's so many different ways that you can take this wrap and manipulate it to address whatever obstacle or situation you're handling at the moment.
So you can custom tailor make it to what suits your situation, essentially.
You can, yeah,
Yeah.
you can manipulate the application to fit the scenario.
That's wonderful. I know, I'm just thinking of, people that we help, invariably they'll order briefs on Amazon or, at Sam's Club or Costco, and they won't fit, or their normal size or their normal brand is out, and then they have to go to a different one, and that same size and another brand doesn't work, and now they got this
Right,
supply that is
right.
just uncomfortable and is not serving its purpose.
You're right.
When you've mentioned a couple of times, Kimberly, and I just want to kind of clarify this for myself and probably for viewers and listeners. Said it's really for the non-ambulatory person.
Right. This is
What?
not for somebody who's going to shop or golf or anything like that.
Okay, okay, but like a person that uses a walker, or has a slow gait, or they ambulate very slowly by shuffling their feet. I mean, this could fit someone like that.
It could, but I don't know how much mileage you're going to get out of it. I
I
mean,
see.
there's different ways of protecting it because it is open at the top.
Hmm.
There are there's different ways that we show how to use a second wrap to kind of create that barrier so it doesn't go anywhere. But you're wanting to keep it in the upward position. I know that sounds very awkward, but once you see how it works and the efficacy of it, it really is a game changer. So if he's just going to go from the bed to a chair, it could definitely work.
Wonderful. Okay.
If he's going to go out and walk to the car, probably not so much
Okay.
because when you move, think about it, when you're moving as a gentleman, things shift
Sure.
constantly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's really meant for a sitting or lying position.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
We've talked a lot about the benefit of the end user or the patient, but how is this benefiting the caregiver?
Let me just tell you, we go to these shows called the Abilities Expos. In
Mhm.
fact, I think we met Cindy and
Oh, sure.
Christine.
Sure.
Yes,
Cindy and
yeah, the
Christina,
Roland Ruby roller, yeah.
adaptable equipment.
Oh
Yep.
my gosh, they are amazing. I met them about 4 years ago at one of the
Okay.
Abilities Expos. But um, I was warned about going because when you go to these expos, if you've ever been to an
Oh
Abilities
yeah.
Expo, it is the most heartwarming but heart wrenching
Yeah.
a roller coaster of emotions because as a caregiver myself, I've been in that position. You don't know what to do, you don't have the resources, and let me tell you, that expo gives you a lot of resources, and anybody that has the opportunity to go to those, do it, because not only are the vendors resources, but they have resources that have resources. Never give up.
Right.
There's always going to be 10 ways to address something. You just got to find them.
Absolutely.
And I think that uh, when you're looking at these, the first one I went to was in Chicago,
Okay.
and we had given this lady whose son had been in a wheelchair. He was 14 all his life. She's been doing this all her life, and he a lot of things he tried, they couldn't get him to conform to, and he would rip them off and all of this. And it was the second day she came back to the show just to lean over the table and hug me and tell me, and I was like, I was starting to bawl, oh my God, you've saved my life. I literally got 3 straight hours of sleep last night. I wasn't up all night. My son, he was able to sleep comfortably. He left it on, everything. I mean, it was just, and if when you look at our website and you look at the customer comments and everything, the 2 words actually that come out of everybody's mouth is game changer. It is truly something different, something unique, something that you have to experience. A lot of times, and I wouldn't say a lot of times, but there are times where somebody comes back and, oh, it didn't work, it leaked. Then we come to find out, well, did you do it this way? Did you do it that way? And it was basically user error. When they went back and tried to did it our way, it worked beautifully. So it's just a matter of getting that knowledge. And that's why we went to putting QR codes on our packaging, QR codes on our user guides that always have the videos. And we've always given like step-by-step instructions. We've always tried to empower the caregiver to give them the right tools and the knowledge to support everything that we're trying to do to make their lives easier as well. Because it can get hard and it can get emotional and very draining at times.
So, Kimberly, you were talking about the support and the videos for people for, the proper application of the QuickChange Wrap. But let's say you have an elderly couple and, an elderly wife isn't as tech savvy, doesn't understand how QR codes work and things like that. Is there customer service support for application instructions and to help people when they first purchase QuickChange Wrap?
Yeah, actually, we've got the most amazing, fantastic, wonderful, warm, and caring. I can't give them enough accolades to explain that they will walk them through them. They will hold their hand. They will make sure that they understand thoroughly how it works. When you call our numbers, you get a live person. After hours, you may get an operator, but they will be called back within 24 hours. Calling during California hours, Pacific Daylight Time, they will get our office direct. And we have an 800 number and a direct number. So
okay. Well, if you want to share those 2 numbers, we'll also make sure they get up on the screen and in the show notes as well.
sure. The 800 number is 1-800-206-2816. And our direct number is 562-453-1515.
Wonderful.
Did I say that slow enough?
Yeah, it's up on the screen, and like I said, we'll put it in the show notes as well. But I want to kind of shift here a little bit. We've talked a lot about family caregivers and the benefits to the end user, but I want to talk a little bit about the healthcare professionals and kind of their view on the QuickChange Wrap and why they might find it beneficial. Why would like wound care nurses or infection prevention specialists really be drawn to the QuickChange Wrap?
Because it fits their open airing concept now, especially because there is no shaving, tubing, adhesives, or suction needed. You're going to pull it right off the shelf and start using it. We make a joke that the emergency departments and those paramedics that are carrying these on their wagons now, they call it the strap, wrap, and roll because it is that fast and they don't have to do all this extra stuff in triage. It's important that, everybody's watching costs now, right?
Right.
So you're looking at the reduction in barrier creams, the reduction in linen laundry at the hospitals and such. And all the other types of infection prevention. When they get these infections, whether it's from shaving or whether it's from adhesives or whether it's from just the moisture breakdown of the skin, these infections, the infection preventists, they are looking at it as this is a great way to prevent all that. The wound care is like, now we don't have to address all these pressure injuries and the salves and all the treatment that goes along with that as well. So it's cost savings in medication, topicals, orals, all of that. Debriding sometimes.
just overall health in general. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. So a cost savings, a staff injury savings. I mean, workers' comp goes through the roof with all these, straining their backs, their necks because they're having to move patients. This is one less thing for them to have to worry about having a workers' comp claim.
Sure, sure. And overall betterment and benefit to their patient's health too. I mean,
Oh gosh,
yeah,
yes.
it's a win-win.
Absolutely.
You know,
Absolutely.
we've also talked about the briefs and some of the difficulties people face with them, and really just the uncomfortable feeling of wearing them. What is there an application where you would recommend the quick change wrap being used with a brief? Can it be used with a brief?
Yes, like we mentioned, and when we say brief, we try to encourage a mesh brief first
Hmm.
because that continues to allow the open airing. Okay. Of course, people at home are going to do what they're going to normally do, and it can be worn with a brief. We suggest maybe a tabbed brief and not for long periods of time because when you're holding in that moisture, that is what's creating that skin breakdown. That moisture is affecting the skin. So, yes, in generalized terms of can it be used with a brief? Absolutely. Yes, it can.
Okay.
It's not as much work to have to get out of it because you're just going to unzip your pants or unzip the brief or not unzip the brief, but pull the brief down
Right.
and be able to change the wrap. Um, it does work in concert with a lot of different urinary apparatus that addresses incontinence. And you have to remember too, incontinence is more of a slow release.
Hmm.
It's your garden hose. It's not like your fire hose, so to speak. So with the slow release or the intermittent release, you do have time to address these issues. So when we say it's great to use with the brief, like I said, when he goes out and he has that independence to go to the restaurants with his family, it will lend him the opportunities to be more free in going to the restroom by himself and being able to change it himself without having to get out of the chair, without having to take off his pants, without having, gives him some more freedom and independence.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, kind of sticking with the professional aspect and benefits of the quick
Okay.
change wrap. Can you talk about some of the organizations that you work with and with that, really seeing the value in the quick change wrap?
Yes, we are currently in a relationship with the North American Spinal Injury Consortium. And because we do work with a lot of neurological units in the hospitals and stuff, when they have those spinal cord injuries, when they have those strokes, as I said, we've gone to the Abilities Expos where we've collaborated with like the Christopher Reeves Foundation, making partnerships with MS chapters or Parkinson's chapters. So any of these times where as these diseases progress, it becomes an issue whether you're female or male. Sooner or later, we're all going to have a urinary
Right.
issue of some sort. And I think that it's being recognized as this is just another feather or another feather in the quiver. How does that saying go? Where it gives you an alternate choice
Right.
and a beneficial choice. That's something that is supple, that is soft, that is effective, and that just, as I said, maintains. I mean, the institutions are so pro preventive than reacting to all the different outcomes with
Hmm.
pressure injuries and skin breakdown and such. And this is kind of my challenge. What I want to do is get to the point where CMS, they've never recognized diapers or any kind of incontinent, that type of incontinent product. And we're so unique. As I said, we have our own uh, DME codes and such because we're not a pad, we're not a brief, we're not a diaper. But to look at this as a preventative issue, CMS is so check the radio box, doctors, to get your reimbursement because you got to do the temperature, the body
Right.
weight, the body mass index, this, that, and the other. And they have to check the box for, uh, uh, what is medically necessary. And we'll get to that in a minute too, because I want to talk about our prior authorization app that we've provided for customers as well. We're trying to, as I said, we're trying to give them every single tool that we can in order for them to get what they need. So I want to be an advocate for the product in having CMS recognize that this is a preventative nature. This is a preventative product. This is not something that, is going to drive somebody like using a diaper into having a pressure injury or, an infection of some kind. Why not be preventative and get those reimbursements and get some sort of coverage for these people, especially in the Medicaid and the state assisted programs?
Right.
I mean, how wonderful would that be to
Yeah.
get some big lobbying group? And that is my goal, to try to drive something like this. If you want to save money, CMS and insurance companies, commercial, because if CMS approves it, which they have, but only for the Medicaid side, not the Medicare side, but once they approve it for both or whatever, then that's when the commercial insurance starts trickling down and they start going, oh, okay, United Healthcare has seen the efficacy of this. And in some tiers, in some plans, it is covered on a tier level.
Mm-hmm.
Some states, their Medicaid programs, their state assisted programs have covered it in certain percentages. So, of course, Medicaid changes yearly, their formularies and everything. So it's like a resubmission every year. But once they start seeing that, wow, this is saving not just the customer money, but the hospital's money, the facility's money, because they're not having to spend so much. And I know Johnson & Johnson, whoever makes the antibiotics and stuff, are probably going to hate me for saying this, but that's okay. But just in incontinence alone, it has been like $26.8 billion spent in pressure injuries. In the U.S. for COTIs, for the catheter-associated urinary tract infections, it has been over $340 million that is spent in addressing those that have acquired these where they didn't have to acquire them.
Right. Yeah.
They can use products like ours, right?
Yeah.
And why not get that coverage, and why not give them? I mean, for instance, and I'm sure my stepfather wouldn't mind me talking about this, but and he was a practicing physician up to the day he died, full schedule on Friday, passed away on a Saturday night.
Wow.
And his passion, I mean, he was one of those, he said, oh, honey, there are shirt doctors and there are skin doctors. And I'm a skin doctor. He read this in one of the medical magazines. And he says, the shirt doctors are the ones that just, hardly pay attention, don't look up from their computers anymore, hit the radio buttons, click, click, click. And you walk out going, did I say that? When you're looking at your report and stuff, and he was more like, I'm a skin doctor, I'll hold their hands. And that's why he had 5 generations of families, because they trusted him. He listened. And that's a big thing about just listening when you're a caregiver. Anyway, he was saying that, if people would pay more attention to listening, it's just like, that's why God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth so you could listen instead of speak. It would be better. But he had prostate cancer, and he practiced with an ileostomy and a patch and bag under his suit, his shirt and tie, and his medical jacket. He was very proper and dressed that way every day.
Wow.
Even on Saturdays. But he went through the prostate cancer. He was privy to all of this and had radiation treatment so aggressive that it actually fused his bowel to his bladder. So he had to have an ileostomy, an iliac conduit. So, and anybody that's had to change, and those caregivers out there, I empathize with you, change those patches and bags, because it is a bacterial urine. So there is a strong odor, and knowing that there's that mucus in the bacterial urine as well. These wraps, had I had them back then, oh my gosh, such a difference, because these will even absorb that thick mucus when you're putting them around like stomas and stuff that are constantly leaking. When you're trying to put that new patch and bag on, whether it's 2 separate pieces or 1 unit piece, you're trying to get that old adhesive off. You're trying to get the nice, clean, dry surface areas. And a lot of times, if you can't get it cleaned off and you can't get it dry, that patch and bag are going to leak. And let me tell you, they're $10 a piece.
Yeah.
And that was back then.
Right.
Okay. So we were always very careful about, but anytime you put pressure on that abdomen where that stoma is, it's like a vicious cycle. It's constantly leaking. So if I had these wraps, and this is one of those off-brochure usages that I was talking to you about, and being able to put it around that stoma or that fistula, whatever they're addressing at that time, and be able to absorb anything that's coming out there while it gives you the opportunity to, as I said, get the old adhesive off, get a nice dry surface area, it's going to give you more longevity on the patch and bag as well, because you are getting that nice adherence.
Right.
So if I could be an advocate for, again, preventative measures in having insurance cover something like this that's preventative and not having to spend all the money and what comes out of even patients, even their medications, there's a charge for it. So if there's a way to prevent that, I'm all for it.
Absolutely. Kimberly, you've kind of summarized it throughout our conversation today, but you'd mentioned earlier how customers have left comments on the website calling the QuickChange Wrap a game changer. Mm-hmm. Why is it called a game changer?
Because there's never been a product that is so simple and can change in less than 60 seconds. That's why the name is called QuickChange, because once you learn how to apply it for your scenario, you're going to be able to do it in less than 60 seconds and save that time, save that precious time for other things that are needing to be taken care of, whether it's sleep, whether it's doing the shopping, whether it's going out and enjoying a meal with your loved one, or being able to sit and converse and listen and have those conversations where you might not have that opportunity when you're constantly changing linens and you're constantly changing him or her. There's bariatric applications for gentlemen. I mean, let me tell you, the Mayo Clinic, when we rolled out the QuickChange in the Mayo Clinic, their bariatric unit, one of the nurses or two of the nurses came to us and said, let me tell you what we're doing in the bariatric unit. And they had been using it on a couple of men that were 500 and 600 pounds, right? Their genitals are hidden up under the pannus. When that happens and the skin is rubbing like that together, it creates fungal, it recreates yeast infections. And then they're on topicals, or then they're on what they call a Intra-Dry, which has like a medication built into it for treating that fungal and yeast infection up under the pannus. And they're saying, wow, it not only helped in, not having them being pushed to the side of the bed to be able to urinate over the side into a urinal or whatever, and not being able to be, almost suctioned like a female calf or a urinal being pressed up so hard against them, and it still goes everywhere. But now they were able to get up under that pannus and protect it and collect the urine and capture any runoff between the thighs just by the way that we train how to wrap for bariatric patients. And they were like, you won't believe this. 3 or 4 weeks go by and their personalities started changing.
Wow.
Because a lot of times these big guys are embarrassed. A lot of the chips on their shoulders and their aggravation is embarrassment. So once they were able to start, kind of being part of their own hygiene care, it was like, oh my gosh, I don't smell anymore. And I'm not saying it completely takes away the stench, but because it absorbs so quickly, it doesn't have time for that bacteria to translate into smell, so to speak. So and that's what was wonderful. Their personalities started to blossom, and it was nice to see these changes, these positive changes in the patients, which then was a positive response to a nurse, which was a positive. It just, it's like pay it forward sort of thing.
Yeah.
And that is another story of it being a game changer.
That's remarkable. And it's not just the customers or the healthcare professionals or the patients themselves, but you're getting recognized by retailers. Is it true that Walmart in their annual open call for best new products made in the USA?
Yes, about
Yeah.
3 years ago, and it was written up in the Los Angeles Business Journal that we submitted the quick change for an open call for best new products made in the USA, and we were one of the winners. And so now we are
Incredible.
on over 1,300 plus Walmart shelves
Wow.
on their e-commerce. We just recently were brought into CVS and their skincare and self-care shelves and on their e-commerce. Of course, we're on Amazon. You can find us on Amazon and on our website too. But yeah, it's been for such a tiny company with a little voice, we're being loudly heard, and it's nice. It's very rewarding, and I'm just so
Very
happy
well
to be a
deserved.
part of this. I
Yeah.
mean, we have such an amazing team. Just we couldn't ask for a better team.
Yeah, no, that's remarkable and well deserved, and congratulations to you and the team at QuickChange Wrap. We've talked a lot about being made in the USA, and it's a wonderful product for patients and families here. But other than the U.S., are there any additional countries really looking to the QuickChange Wrap as a way to battle MASD, which is moisture associated skin damage, UTIs or the cauties, and IADs, incontinence
Right,
associated with dermatitis?
right. I'm glad you asked because just last year, Canada brought us into their medical formulary as part and covered by the nation, by their national medical program. So the quick change is now being found in Canada
Wow.
and in their long-term facilities, and currently spreading into their acute care facilities as well. So we're super excited being partnered with their teams there. We are expanding into the UK, Australia. I believe we're already in Dubai because we're in the Cleveland Clinic and they have a clinic in Dubai. So yeah, it is spreading. We get interest all the time when we go to these trade shows. Korea has been interested, Japan has been interested, and the Philippines. So
Wow.
I mean, what a great way that this is getting out. And just as I said, who knew,
Right.
right? Who
Right.
knew?
And it's a testimony to, the benefits, and, it really does work as it's supposed to. And it's a tremendous benefit to families and their loved ones,
Yes,
you
yes.
know. I want to, talk a little bit here as we wrap up, Kimberly, and just really
Sure.
appreciate you speaking with us today about the Quick Change Wrap. I'm very proud to be brand ambassador for it and want to help get this out to as many families and healthcare professionals as possible. But for the end user, the family who's watching or listening to this, and they're saying, I already buy all these briefs, I can't afford to add another product on the shelf, which I can appreciate that. Does insurance cover the costs of the wraps, or is it reimbursable in any fashion? I know you mentioned, state aid, Medicaid, but what about, private health insurances, long-term care insurances, Medicare? I know you
Right.
kind of touched on that a little bit, but could you break it down on how people can purchase Quick Change Wrap?
Sure. I know that Walmart allows the quick changes now on their ordering where you can use your HSA and your FSA accounts.
Right.
United Healthcare, as I said, has come to the table just as of last year to cover some portions of it. We do have on our website, and this is what I wanted to talk about, being able to give everybody the tools. We have a prior authorization application, and it is already pretty much filled out with every single if you're familiar with ICD-10 codes, which are diagnostic codes, which covers medical necessity. And all they need to do is have their physician fill that out, complete it, attach his progress notes to it, and there's a section where it says what have you already tried and failed, and make sure that they list those so that they can see that, okay, I can't use condom caps, I'm too retracted, I get macerations, That's, I can't use catheters. I get UTIs. I've tried diapers, but I just get pressure injuries. And this has worked for me. And they can certainly go onto our website and get a sample pack. Request a sample pack just to see if they want to try it. If they come to our Abilities Expos, we give out sample packs there as well, where they can try it. And just all I can say is be open-minded to try it and try something new. The medical industry is evolving daily. Yeah. New products come out daily. You may be quite pleasantly surprised. And that's all I can say is that read the testimonies, look at our website, watch our videos, try it, and be amazed.
Absolutely. And, again, we're going to have links to all of this in the show notes as well as up on the screen. But finally, you mentioned Walmart e-commerce, CVS shelves, and their e-commerce, Amazon. How do consumers purchase the QuickChange Wrap?
With a credit card? No. Sorry. You have to see the humor. We were talking about this earlier. If you can't find humor in your day. But when you say, clarify, what do you mean?
Well, where do you recommend people go to purchase a QuickChange Wrap? Is it on your website? Or is it just anywhere it's available? Where do you suggest?
Right. Well, I would check their Walmart shelves first. I know that I was just at my Walmart here in Huntington Beach, and they had it on their shelves as well. And by the way, have you noticed when you go into the incontinence section, it's like 90% women, and this little tiny row is for men. I feel so bad because there's so many more options. But with Walmart, if you don't find it on the shelves, you can certainly find it on their e-commerce. Just go to walmart.com, go to cvs.com, amazon.com, quickchange.com. If it works for them, subscribe to our monthly where it automatically ships every month. And there's a case of 100 that come to you. It'll drop the price down for you. If it works, go that route.
Wonderful. Finally, Kimberly, let's say you and I don't talk to each other for the next 5 years, which I don't think that's going to be the case. But let's say we ran into each other 5 years from now at one of these ability expos or some healthcare conference. Where is QuickChange Wrap 5 years from now?
At the front of the aisle. No, I'm just kidding. I think it's going to build on itself, quite frankly. I think that, the medical industry, the CNAs especially, are seeing how beautiful this works. Again, not only for the patient, but for the caregiver as well. How preventative it can be. And as I said, I'm hoping that the insurance companies will start looking at this as a preventative nature to wound care and to infections, and see what can be done in promoting the healthier route than the reactive route.
Yes.
If that makes sense.
No, it makes total sense. And, I will testify to this as, a case manager for our home care company. This is what families need, this QuickChange Wrap for their male loved ones, especially because, everybody has a cost with depends and briefs. Everybody has, like you said, the physical aspect of having to bend and turn and all these other things. And how many times has a family caregiver changed a brief and 2 minutes later they have to change it again? It's an overall benefit to not only your loved one, but to your overall health. And we just appreciate the work you guys are all doing at QuickChange Wrap. Kimberly Anderson, the Director of Business Development. It's been a pleasure.
It has been. It's so nice to see you. And if you see Cindy and Christine, give them my love.
I will. We see them. Yep. We see them every month. We produce a show called, the Caregivers Journal that we asked them to be the co-host on with us. And they're wonderful people. And I will definitely pass it on to them when I talk to them next.
Okay. Thank you, Lance.
You're welcome. Have a great day.
Thank you, everybody, for listening.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us today here at All Home Care Matters. All Home Care Matters is here to help families as they navigate these long-term care issues. We invite you to visit us at allhomecarematters.com, where there's a private, secure, fillable form where you can give us feedback, show ideas, or if you have questions. Every form is read and responded to. And remember, you can listen to the show on any of your favorite podcast streaming platforms or watch the show on our official YouTube channel. Just make sure that you hit that subscribe button so that you never miss an episode. We'd also like to say thank you again to Kimberly Anderson from UI Medical, the makers of the QuickChange Wrap, for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you again here at All Home Care Matters.
Thank you for joining us today. We look forward to you joining us again on another episode of All Home Care Matters. To learn more about the show and to connect with us, visit us at allhomecarematters.com.